Welcome to Living Your Greatness. Each episode, we bring on great people to inspire you to achieve your greatness. We discuss topics all related to health and wellness. Listen to world-class stories, learn valuable lessons, and turn knowledge into action. It is now time for you to unlock your inner greatness. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Living Your Greatness. This is your host, Ben Mummy, and today we have a new guest to the show, and her name is Daniela Cambone. For those of you who don't know Daniela, she is a veteran journalist and is considered one of the most trusted voices in the precious metals sector. Daniela is an editor-at-large and chief anchor for Stansberry Research. Prior to Stansberry, she was an editor-in-chief and lead anchor for Kikko News, which she helped start in 2010, covering global markets, economic news, and commodities. The brand became the outstanding news source for precious metals and the commodities coverage. Daniela covered and moderated at various investment and mining conferences, such as the BMO Capital Markets, PDAC, and the Denver Gold Forum. Daniela's leadership and vision helped to drive over 1 million unique views daily on Kitco.com. Her work was featured and covered on Jim Cramer's TheStreet.com, Forbes, Yahoo Finance, and other media channels. Daniela holds a bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism from Montreal's Concordia University and a master's degree in communications from the University of Rome. So Daniela, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben. It's an absolute honor and so nice to be with a fellow Montrealer.
So Daniela, let's actually start off with your background. Tell us more about your formative years growing up in Canada and what inspired you to become a journalist broadcaster.
So I grew up I grew up in Montreal. We are 3 kids in the family. My parents are originally from Italy, and at home we only spoke Italian. And that's why I always kind of say I feel like I'm a citizen of the world because, yes, I'm from Montreal and I went to school in French and English, but we only spoke Italian at home. And I spent my summers in Rome, and now I live in the US. So kind of a little mix of everything. But my childhood was pretty much as regular as it gets, like typical Montreal childhood. Playing in the snow for most of it, tobogganing, ice skating, skiing. God, I miss Montreal. Oh, well. And what led me to get into journalism? Well, it's funny. When I was a kid, when I was 3 or 4, my parents would tell me that, all the other kids are watching the Flintstones or whatever. I just wanted to watch the news. I was just fascinated with news coverage from a young age. And fact, at the dinner table, I would then recite the news back to my family and say, this happened today. So I guess I always had a curious mind and was just always fascinated by the media industry. What I didn't know I would end up covering was finance. I thought that would have been the last thing because I wasn't interested in Wall Street at all at the time, probably in my 20s. And then late 20s when I started at Kikko, that's when I really, actually before that, because I started covering the insurance and banking sector in Canada. And that's when I started really falling in love with financial journalism. And I realized, wow, this is, I thought I was going to be a political journalist. And then realized how much I love covering financial news. So like I said, I started in banking and insurance. And then with Kikko, I became so specialized in commodities coverage. And that's where I really made my mark. Now at Stansberry Research as editor-at-large, covering all facets. But still to this day, I love journalism, love what I do. And I guess I'm one of those blessed few that from a young age knew I wanted to be a journalist. Like I was looking back at my high school yearbook and it said most likely to be on TV. That's what I was voted. I just always knew what I wanted to do. And it's such a great field for any folks out there watching, thinking about pursuing journalism.
Thanks for sharing your background there of how you got into journalism. And it truly is fun sometimes when we do look back at our own kind of experiences or kind of like you said, high school books there, like books and kind of seeing, what we were thinking at that time or what others were thinking of us at that time. So
I guess even in high school, I started I went to Villa Maria High School in Montreal, and I started the DJ club there. Well, I don't know if that's what they call it anymore, but there was a huge cafeteria and there was a room. And I remember I was on student council and I said, wait, we have speakers, we have a mic. Why don't we do like lunch music hour? And they're like, okay, if you want to do that. And I started this DJ club and then brought on other DJs. And every week we rotated. And now my niece goes to Villa and she's like, oh, do you know there's a DJ club? And I was like, do you know who started it? Your aunt started the DJ club. So to the point I was trying to make is that I just was always in love with broadcasting, talking to people. So, I was on the student newspaper, but I was really focused on, this is what I want to become. I knew I wanted to become a journalist. I just didn't know it would take me on the path of becoming the precious metals journalist, but that's where life throws you curveballs sometime.
Absolutely. That's kind of interesting to hear there about how much entertainment was always part of your life. Something that I am curious about, Daniela, is, when you're not in front of the camera, and you're not entertaining others, what does someone like you who is smart, humble, and hardworking do in your spare time?
Thank you for those kind words. So I guess Daniela pre-mom mode, and this is probably a pretty boring answer, but when I'm not working, I'm actually watching news. Like I don't watch TV shows, whatever the top Netflix show is. Like I don't care. I don't have like the brain power to sit through a series, but I love news. Like I binge watch news. So when I'm not working, I'm watching news or reading news, everything. Pre-mom Daniela was playing tennis a lot, hanging out with her friends a lot, skiing, doing a lot more outdoor activities, I would say. Jogging in Central Park. But right now, most of my time is when I'm not working is with my kids. So I'm either in a playground or on the monkey bars or at a bounce house or something, bouncy house, whatever they're called. So not a lot of free time these days. And like I said, if there is any, I'm just educating myself because I feel like if you are in journalism, there's never a top. Like there's always something to learn, always. So just, you have to be humble and realize like, I know this much and there's this much to know.
Absolutely. And also, especially too, in your specific field, right? There's so much news always going on, right? With the macro, the micro.
Love it. That's what I love about it. Like I wake up every day and I don't know how my day will go with work. And I love that. So, there's always breaking news. There's always something new to cover. You'll have some doldrums where it's like, okay, how else can I cover this? That's not been repeated. But there's just always something new, always. So,
and there's also too, I would say, there's a lot of news, yes, to follow, but then there's a lot of noise too, right? There's so much out there. So how do you also like break down the difference between the aspects that you should be focusing on and not getting caught up like in the rabbit hole of following everything,
That's a really good question. And I think that's what's made our program so successful at Stansberry, the Daniela Cambone show, is that I really know our audience. Like I know this audience. I've been covering specifically this audience for close to 15 years. So I know the content they like, which allows me to hone in and say, I know whether a guest will resonate or not. And I know which topics will do well or not. And it allows me to cut through a lot of the noise and say, my audience will question that. Maybe I need to bring another side. So it's almost like my audience keeps me in check and allows me to have a better understanding of, what I need to be paying attention to. So, and as a journalist, like you are fed all this information, but it's kind of like, I've been doing it so long that I, when the team, like when I sit down and the producers like, do you want to cover this? I'm really like, it's like a checklist. I'm like, no, next, no, who do you got? No, like, it's just, at this stage in the game, I know what works and what doesn't, but that just comes with experience.
Makes sense. Yeah. Time and experience for sure. So Daniela, let's actually go there. During your career, right, you've brought on so many individuals onto your show. Can you share with us some of the higher profile investors you've had the pleasure to work with? or had the pleasure to interview and moderate on an investment panel?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's so many incredible people I've had the honor of interviewing. I mean, I've worked alongside Jim Cramer when I was reporting from thestreet.com, for 5 years. I had the pleasure of interviewing Mark Cuban, which was definitely a career high since he was so awesome. And it took me so long to get that interview. It was more like I was so satisfied that I finally got Mark Cuban to come on the show after years of trying. I always love interviewing Frank Giustra, who, anyone who follows gold knows he's, at the top when it comes to being a voice of reason in that sector. Steve Forbes was another career highlight. I mean, George Foreman was cool. I got to interview him. I mean, Dr. Ron Paul was another high, always so kind and humble, such a really just great man. Yeah, I feel like I'm missing people, but it's funny, I interviewed like Don King, I've had like very an eclectic mix of people, but in terms of investors, I would definitely say he was probably Mark Cuban, Frank Giustra, Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Robert Kiyosaki. Like the list, every day the list can just grow and grow and grow. So that's where I'm blessed that I get to actually meet and connect with these people and try to have a better understanding of their investment philosophy.
There really are so many good people too, no matter what their profile level is. But thanks for giving us that kind of feel of, some of the highest profile investors that you've had on.
I mean, I've been in most of the sharks, I think, and the dragons. So Robert Herjavec, Kevin O'Leary's come on multiple times. He's always great. Barbara Corcoran, Damon John. I've had Michelle Romanoff from Dragon's Den on a few times, Vince Guzzo. So in terms of like high profile investors, they've all come on the show.
So what was one of the most difficult career change decisions you had to make in your occupational career? And any tips or words of wisdom to give to others who are considering a similar career change?
Absolutely. That's an easy one for me since it was pretty recent. I was probably when I left Kikko, which was the place I was at longest. And I felt, like it was a family, like so connected. I mean, I had started Kikko Media, Kikko News, built it from zero and into the world's largest commodities news desk at the time when I was there. And I was at the top of my game. I was editor in chief. I was pregnant. And, Stansberry had come to me with an offer. And that was probably one of the most difficult decisions I had to make, to leave somewhere where, I felt like I was part of a family. I was very happy, very comfortable, pregnant. And I'm thinking like, can I really make this change now in my life? Like when I'm about to start a new family with twins. Do I really want all this extra stress of having to perform, meet expectations, deliver? Can I do it? Can I replicate the magic of Kikko? Everyone probably around me, not my immediate circles tell me you can do this. Like my husband was like, yes, you could do this. You can do this. And other people thought, oh, you're crazy. You're so comfortable now. Why would you, why? But my gut told me this was a moment that I felt like if it was now or never, like, why not take this leap of faith with this great company and start a media division with them, and that I could do it again. And I did in a year. So I was able to match subscribers that Kikko has in a year's time, less than a year's time at Stansberry. So I'm really proud of that. And it was the best decision I made for myself and my family. So my advice is just listen to your gut. I know it sounds like it's something hard to do maybe because some people don't even hear their gut, but like there's a voice within you that knows the truth. and knows whether you can or not. And it's just like, just try and block out the noise, know you can. And sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith, and it can prove to be the best decision of your life.
Absolutely. I think those are some good words. I think when there is a really good opportunity that is uncomfortable, is different. You don't know unless you try, right? And maybe if you never took that opportunity, you'll never know, right? Whether it was a decision or whether it wasn't, right? So, and kind of like you said, already within 1 year, like look at what you've already done, right? So that's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely very proud of that. And if I hadn't have left, I still would, I was very happy where I was, and but you don't challenge yourself, right? Like what they say, that's where real growth comes, when you get out of your comfort zone. And I felt like I had to get out of my comfort zone. Like I knew there was more I could do, that there was more within me. There was more I wanted to do, more I wanted to grow. And so I said, yeah, I'm gonna do it, even though it's coming out of probably the worst moment. There was a reason that it was coming now. And you do it, even if you have kids coming along or whatever, you find a way, and the pieces will just fall into place, somehow. So
Daniela, something that I want to shift to now is, we kind of spoke about, the two organizations that you've been with as a journalist. You are regarded as the most trusted voices in precious metal sector. What do you owe that reputation to?
Well, thank you. And it is a title that I do not take lightly. So when people say you are the most, trusted source and voice in the precious metal sector, I am so humbled and honored. And I worked really hard for that title, I would say. I think my audience keeps me accountable. I have tremendous respect for this audience. I love my audience, and I feel I need to show up for them every single day, even when I'm tired and I'm exhausted. I do it because I feel like I have a public service to do. They want the information, they want the interviews. It offers them some clarity, some guidance. And I am honored to be in this position. So I think, why do I have this title? Well, I earn people's trust by being true to myself also. Like I feel a lot of times in journalism and in this space, people will try and replicate another journalist's persona or, whatever, how they their interviewing style, whatever. And I always feel that backfires. So when I'm training people, part of my team and or up and coming reporters, I always say, just be authentic to who you are. Do not try and be someone else, because people are smart. The audience is smart. They pick up on phoniness and fakeness. So just be true to who you are and perfect that skill, and never think you're the greatest and no one can top you. No, stay humble, keep learning, keep bettering yourself, practice. I'll look back on videos 3 years ago and I'll be like, so there's always room for growth. No matter where you are at. And so I think the audience feels they can connect with me, that I'm authentic, and they know that if I'm bringing on a source, I trust this source, and I've vetted them. So, I pass on a lot of people who want to come on the show. And I really just try and stick to what I know my audience is going to love. So I think that combination of things, people just see me as someone that they can trust, they can, they look up to, they respect. And like I said, I'm honored and grateful for that.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points there, which I definitely think has really helped you, get that kind of title. And huge thing that you kind of mentioned is how you've always really cared and focused on your audience, right? I think a big breakthrough last year for you was when you ended up moderating that conversation between, gold as well as Bitcoin and bringing that on. I think there was a time with everything that was going on in the macro picture that there's almost this kind of tug and war against these two ways of preserving your wealth. At that time, right, you had that opportunity. I know Kikko was part of it. I think it was David Lim that called it on. Needless to say, right, you brought on a topic that I think was well needed. And since then, there's been other debates. And I think that's great. So, Daniela, one thing I actually want to go to here, you've covered the precious metals and which to invest your wealth or hard-earned money. What advice would you give to new investors, including millennials, to think about when investing in the precious metals? And are there any investment sectors you would recommend?
Yeah, and just to clarify just want to clarify on the gold Bitcoin debate. So that was probably one of the hardest things I've done in my career, and one of the things I'm most proud of. Because people, and they wouldn't know the amount of work. I mean, it was 1 month of research where I locked myself in my room every night and weekend preparing for that after work with the kids. Frank Justra had come with me. We were talking about doing this Bitcoin gold debate. I had then pitched it to Saylor, who said he was going to think about it. And I thought it was never going to happen at this point. Weeks later, maybe 2 months later, Saylor said he was down to do it, and he announced it on Twitter. So we were the original people who said we were going to do it. And then other outlets were like, I want to do it. So Kikko was like, I want to do it, or BNN wanted to do it, Reuters, like all, and I was like, no. They came to me and I'm going to do the debate. So I was the original thought process for the debate. Whether outlets want to take, some, I don't know what they were trying to do, but anyhow, I won the debate in terms of getting to moderate it. And there have been other debates, but that will be the biggest debate in history ever on the topic. I'm confident in saying that. So there cannot be another debate that can beat that. Like, you have the greatest voice, or one of the most popular voices in the gold sphere, versus the most popular voice in the Bitcoin sphere. And it was an incredible discussion. And I don't even want to try and replicate it. It's like, that was one for the ages, and content like that happens rarely. So it's just, I chuckle when I see other outlets that want to take a stab at it, because I'm like, nothing will compare to it. Just nothing will. Well, it's like the Friends reunion. It's like they should have just left it alone. Some things you just gotta. But in terms of investing advice, is that your question? What?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't give advice. That's why I interview the experts. So I do not have any investing. Well, if I did, you can ask me on the street. But it depends on the person's age, situation, how much money they want to invest. I mean, if they come to me and say, should I be looking at investing in gold, silver, platinum, and palladium, which I often get asked, like, hey, Daniela, should I buy gold today? It's like, well, ask yourself why you want to buy it. Even with Bitcoin, like, are you just buying it because Ben bought it and because Daniela bought it? So I think what I can say is just understand the reasoning of why you want to invest in a certain asset, and don't just do it because others are jumping in. Like, try to understand the asset. And I wouldn't just invest in a bunch of random things. Like, I personally really know and understand what I'm investing in. So know what you're investing in. If it's mining companies, really understand the management, the story, their past track record. So do your homework like anything else,
It makes a lot of sense. I think your biggest theme there is make sure you educate yourself and do your own due diligence to know why you're investing in what you're investing. Right?
Yeah, like, don't just buy gold. I think gold's great, obviously. But don't just buy it because I think that. Like, understand why, what's your belief system? Why do you think adding gold or silver is a wise choice to your portfolio? So are you doing it as an inflation hedge? Are you doing it to get out in 6 months? Are you doing it to keep it for your kids one day? Like, what is the reasoning, And then, if you meet me on the street, I can help maybe guide you and say, well, maybe you should be looking at this or that. But just know what you're trying to accomplish with your investment.
Absolutely. I think that was really good advice, just because sometimes I'll have some friends, that will come ask me for some investment advice. And I think the most important thing is for them right away to educate themselves. So I always point them in more of that direction. Like, hey, this is the macro picture. I recommend you go educate yourself. And then, down the road, let's have other conversations. Because I think at the same time, too, everyone has a blind side, too, right? So it doesn't mean that everything that I think that I'm doing is completely right, because that would be a lot.
No, that's a really valid point.
So Daniela, I actually want to go back. We were starting to talk about the Bitcoin and gold debate, and thanks again for kind of giving us more context of how that developed. But we can't ignore that Bitcoin, the speculative success in such a short period of time, what it has had. But by the same token, we also can't dismiss that the yellow metal's track record as a store of value for thousands of years. So are you at the liberty to say what side of the fence you sit on? Are you a gold or Bitcoin bug, or are you both?
So I don't think it's a side of the fence I'm sitting on. I mean, look, I think it's pretty obvious. Like I come from the gold world. That is an asset that I fully understand, but I'm aware that I'm not like the masses. Like I've studied gold for, close to 15 years now. Like I've said it in the past, like I'm one with the metal. I understand the DNA of gold. I'm extremely comfortable with investing in gold, silver, platinum, palladium, rhodium. I was late in the game to Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin's great. I think there's room in a portfolio for both, whether that's for different reasons or not. I think that Bitcoin has a lot of properties that gold does not, and gold has properties that Bitcoin does not. And, I don't know if Bitcoin's going to win the race in the end. I don't mean in terms of gold. I mean just in terms of, will there be other cryptos that might emerge, like a Bitcoin 2.0? I don't know if it's the OG, like right now it's the greatest crypto. Will it be that in 20 years from now? I don't know. I don't know. But I am still learning a lot about Bitcoin. I'm fascinated by blockchain. So where I'm extremely well versed on the precious metals, I still consider myself a student of the cryptocurrencies. And it's such an incredible, once you go down that rabbit hole, you realize how little you really know. Like when you go into the weeds, and I'm talking to people who are really embedded in the system. Like, I mean, the layers beneath the layers, and these people are just brilliant, and they see the world in a completely different way. And I'm just like, wow. So Bitcoin, at least for me, has created such a mind shift. And that's the most incredible thing that it's done in my life. The way it's changed the way I see the world and understand the financial system. Whether you believe in Bitcoin or not, you cannot say, or you can't underestimate its power there. So anyways, long story short, I'm invested in both gold and Bitcoin. My gold position is larger than my Bitcoin position, but I think that I'm comfortable being in both right now. Again, I'm much more exposed to the gold side, but yeah, I think again, it goes back to, don't just do it because I have both, understand the reasons, understand why you're doing it.
I think that's some great points there. I think whatever investment decision you ever decide to make sure you actually know what you're putting yourself into, and not doing it kind of like you said, because Daniela Cambone is in it.
And that's where I feel like I've matured in cryptocurrencies, because the last correction we saw in Bitcoin, where mainstream media made it seem like the sky was falling, and then you see in context, well, it actually was the smallest correction that Bitcoin faced this year. But I didn't panic on this correction. I was like, oh, that's just the DNA of Bitcoin. Like Max Kaiser and Michael Saylor, those are people who helped me understand that. And in studying them, I'm prepared for a correction. Like I'm not panicking in a correction. I'm just navigating the correction and taking advantage of a correction. So that's where I say you have to study and know. So when, corrections do happen, you know how to pivot and you're not panicking and freaking out.
For sure. I want to kind of now go back to, thinking about, when you've been an editor at large and chief anchor, no doubt that you have conducted many interviews in your time. what would you consider were some of the most memorable interviews that you have done? And by the same token, what were some of the most awkward interviews that you've done?
Yeah, so memorable. I think I said, Mark Cuban was definitely a memorable one. I think because I worked so hard to get it. And then he was so kind when I met him. I remember his PR person was like, you have 3 minutes with Mark Cuban. And I was like, okay. And I had flown to Toronto. And I rarely get nervous rarely get nervous, but I was nervous for Mark Cuban. And there was all this built up stress and I had to like perform and like, I couldn't screw this one up, And the room was hot. I remember thinking he's going to think the room is so hot. Anyways, then he walked in, all like 6'6" of him. And I was like, ee. And he was so chill and down to earth. And he was like, hey, Daniela, like, what's up? And I was like, hi, Mark. I'm like, I'm so sorry. The room's so hot, all these lights. And he was like, no worries. And I was like, okay. So I'm like, I know I have 3 minutes with you. He's like, 3 minutes. He's like, you could take all the time you want. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, he's like, it's fine. He's like, I have like over an hour. So he's like, if you need that. And he was so kind. So it was memorable, not so much for the interview, but like I said, like what I had to do to get it. Like I worked so hard to get it, be so persistent. And then he was so humble and kind that just made it even better. But then other interviews, like aren't necessarily famous people, but I remember one of my first ones, I was panning for gold with Yukon Dan. His name is actually Yukon Dan. And I had just started in the gold industry and here I am panning with this man, just like you would think he would look like, a Yukon Dan, like, like full beard, jolly, Santa Claus type. And here I am panning for gold with him. But yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting some really interesting characters. So in terms of awkward, luckily I can say I can count on my hand the amount of uncomfortable interviews I've had. Like I haven't had many. Like I said, it's like on one hand were awkward, but it was more with people that kind of surprised me. And I'm not going to name them, but who you think would be super friendly because they're normally in front of the television a lot, on camera a lot. And then they're completely different off air. So they would come and be like super cold. Like I'd be like, hi, excited for the interview. And they'd be like, okay, great. Like not say a word. And you're like, okay, well, we're going to start the interview then. And then the lights go on and the camera's on. And then they're like, so Danielle, I'm so glad to be with you. And you're just like, wait, what? That was completely Jekyll and Hyde personality. But again, that's happened with like, less than 5 people in like 15 years. So I think that's a pretty good ratio that most people I interview are extremely kind, polite, and I have a really good relationship with them. And that's why a lot of them are repeat guests on my show, since they're just great people that I like to be surrounded by and want my audience to be exposed to. So yeah, that sums up my awkward, not so awkward interviews.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Daniela. If you could be one of the people that you've interviewed, who would that be and why?
I want to be Mark Cuban because he's a billionaire, but I don't know. With one of the people I've interviewed, no one. I want to be myself. I honestly just want to be myself. I wouldn't want to be anyone else. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's the truth. I'm happy being me, and like I said, grateful to be in the role that I get to interview these people, but I wouldn't want to be anyone else but me.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. When preparing for this interview, I learned that you view Paris Hilton as an intelligent investor. Why do you believe this is true?
I'm happy you asked that because one of my friends flagged this to me, like some site sourced this, and I'm like, when did I say that? Like that. So I don't know if so just to clear the air, I do not I met Paris Hilton at an event and she was extremely kind, sweet, and very intelligent, just charming beyond. And we hit it off, we exchanged numbers, took photos, just really nice girl. I know nothing about her investment strategy, but I'm sure she's very good in business. I mean, she's built empires around her brand. And yes, people could say, well, she has a Hilton name, but she did a lot with the name. Whether you like Paris or not, you can't take that away from her. But no, I never said anything about her investment style, or maybe something was taken out of context, but no idea. And no, I have no sentiment there, but nice girl, really nice girl.
Awesome. Okay. So for everyone listening, Danielle does not know about her investment decisions, but she does know that she's a great human being, and that's good to know. Awesome.
She was really kind and sweet and humble when I met her. So
awesome. So Daniela, who are your greatest mentors, and where do you suggest that millennial investors go to better educate themselves before making any investment decisions?
Well, my greatest mentor is my dad, in terms of business, and and my parents for different reasons. But when I'm talking business and making business-minded decisions, my dad, in terms of being a good human and doing right and just being the best version of yourself, my mom and dad. In terms of career mentors, I've said it before, one of the journalists that inspired me to get into broadcast journalism is an Italian journalist named Lily Gruber, who was on La Rai in Rome. I used to watch her as a kid and I loved her style. She was just so cutthroat and like to the point with her guests. And I was like, this woman is a badass, you know? I mean, she was a pioneer and she is still a pioneer. But yeah, those are definitely my parents, you know, top of the list. You know, if I am who I am, thanks to them.
That's beautiful. So Danielle, as you know, the purpose of this podcast is to inspire people to achieve greatness and enhance their overall personal well-being. So what is your definition of greatness?
That's a really profound question and a great one. And I think that, you know, in my career, I've met, or I continue to meet, a lot of powerful and wealthy individuals. And the ones that impress me, or that I would say are great and of greatness, are not ones, you know, I don't really care about how many millions or billions you have, doesn't impress me. But the fact, if you've managed to amass that wealth and still remain or aim to be a good person, and by good person, I mean, you know, have a solid foundation of love for your family, respect for your friends, care for humanity, and trying to do good with that money. And it's not just greed and look at, you know, the Rolex I have. So I don't equate wealth with greatness. I equate greatness with being a good person and wanting to give back and wanting to do good. Those are people I admire, that I'm like, wow, they have a heart of gold. You know, these people are pure. They want to help others. That's greatness. You know, that's greatness for me in my books.
That's great. And it sounds like from what you said too, right, is it's not all about them, right? So whether it's with money or whether it's, let's say if they were in a sport, it's more than, yes, they're able to succeed, but they're actually sharing it, right? They're sharing it with others, exactly. With their family, with their friends, right?
Yeah. And maybe just being there, like being a good dad or mom or sister or brother, just being a good human despite the wealth. And you're not just, you know, thinking that you've made it and, you know, peace out everyone else, that you can give back. That's what I think is greatness, and I respect a lot.
That's awesome. I've actually heard that a couple other times from some other guests, and I've said this before on my show, but actually Kobe Bryant was actually huge on that. He was huge on you're not achieving greatness unless you're sharing your greatness with others, right? So,
and he's one of the greatest.
Daniela, who is a future guest that you would like to see on this show?
Bono. Yeah, can he come on the show if he's watching? Who? I feel like I was just thinking, oh, I'd love to have him on, and now I can't remember, but no one off the top of my head. I mean, there's a lot of people on my list that I was like, I'd love to get them on, and maybe do scheduling, or their, you know, I'd love to have Ray Dalio on, actually, in terms of investing people. Ray Dalio would probably be my number one pick right now.
I'll let you know if I could try and get Ray Dalio or any of the others like Bono. I'll do my best.
There you go, Ben. There you go.
Challenge accepted. So
Wouldn't it be nice to interview Wayne Gretzky? I mean, which Canadian would not want to interview Wayne Gretzky?
true. Well, Wayne Gretzky was actually on my list, so I will let you know. If I could get any of those things on.
Do it. There you go. Good luck, Ben.
So Daniela, where is the best place for my listeners to connect with you online?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active, or most active on Twitter. So that's at Daniela Cambone. I believe my messages are open, so you can message me there, or my Instagram is DCCSM. It is private, but if I don't think you're a weirdo, you're more than likely to be my friend. It's more than welcome to be my friend. So but Twitter probably the easiest.
Awesome. Great. So I will make sure to put that in the podcast notes so then any of the listeners know where to go to find you, Daniela. And Daniela, I want to take the last moment here, to really thank you for your time. Thank you for being here today. And thank you for, just sharing, your whole background and kind of how you evolved into who you are as a person.
Well, Ben, I want to thank you. I am honored that you reached out to me for this podcast. Thrilled to be on it. And I just want to say you're a great interviewer, and I wish you success with your podcast. I wish you all the best.
Thank you for listening to the Living Your Greatness podcast. If this show has added value, please subscribe, leave a rating, and make a review. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be considered personal, legal, or investment advice or a recommendation to buy or sell securities or any other product. It is based on opinions, current events, press releases, and interviews, but is not infallible. It may contain errors, and Living Your Greatness offers no inferred or explicit warranty as to the accuracy of the information presented. If personal advice is needed, consult a qualified legal, tax, or investment professional. Do not base any investment decision on the information contained on Living Your Greatness or our videos.